if you guys officially started producing anything out of there yet?
Yeah, I mean, we all work in there all the time. The radio stations, too, are broadcasting from there.
Nice.
But yeah, that's our office now.
That's exciting, man.
It is pretty exciting. Yeah, it could be like a neat new chapter. It's like it's like, I mean, this is a really nice media space that you have here. But ours is like, and yours is a lot more tech in some ways than ours. But, we have this giant space with all these studios and, it's going to be fun to figure out what to do with it.
And to be in Old Town. You guys are kind of right where the action's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, the Outpost has been in Old Town for the last almost 8-9 years, something like that. But yeah, having them up here with us too.
Because the radio station was down in Ferndale.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a bit of a trek down there.
Yeah, people got tired of it, except for the people who lived that way, which were fewer and fewer as time went on. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to attract talent and say, yeah, you're going to be in Ferndale.
You're going to be driving in a car for a half hour each way each day is a bummer. Yeah. I remember one thing that stuck with me is like Humboldt, has like the lowest commute times, or it did anyway, recently, of any county in the state. The smallest commute times, which is interesting. People don't like to drive a half hour, whereas in the city, like they might always do it.
You could drive an hour and it's just part of your daily routine.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're just not accustomed to it.
Yeah.
We're trying to cling on to a way of life where you don't have to engage in that at all.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, commuting. I lived in Sacramento for a little bit and it's just not fun.
No. Spending
a portion of your day trapped in your car in bumper to bumper traffic is not how anybody wants to spend their time.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Crazy thought.
Yeah.
Like, is this what I would want to do with my life? No, not really.
Probably not.
Yeah. I'm excited. I have a buddy who works for you guys and he was in the space and thought it was pretty cool. It's all just minor tweaks. I mean, that's been my whole thing here is just you change one thing and then realize, I got to do this. I need this piece of tech. I need this thing. I would assume you guys are a little more fleshed out because you have been doing radio for so long and you're not entering a new space, so to speak. You're just bringing it all in-house.
Yeah, I mean, all the radio people are really stoked because, think about all the gear down in Ferndale. It was in an old building, kind of an old like farm building, and it was all kind of like wired together, duct tape, and they've got all new gear. They're really excited. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been, like I said, we've been working in Old Town for the last 8 years or so we haven't done so much radio. I'm excited to see what we do. Yeah.
Do you think there will be any unique collaboration efforts between the radio side and the journalism side?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the radio people, they do journalism too, in a way, they get on, radio, they get on the radio and talk to people in the community about what's going on. So, I mean, it's all it's a big visioning process of how it all works together. But yeah, it's kind of like when we were still in Ferndale, when the Outpost was still in Ferndale, we did kind of stuff like that all the time. We had like, internet, radio collaborations. We'd go on the air all the time. The radio people would produce stuff for the web. And we're looking to get back to that sort of different crew now. So it's kind of, different people have different interests and the organization sort of forms to what people are good at and what they want to do.
What was the decision to split that apart originally?
It was it didn't make sense to run a news organization, I guess. Like you say, driving half hour to Ferndale, driving from Eureka, where we all lived at the time, to like the boondocks to do news. That became too much. And then commercial space in Eureka, especially at the time, was so cheap that it didn't make,
Why commute?
Why commute? Yeah. And we don't need a whole lot of gear, just some laptops and a router.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Especially where you guys aren't brick and mortar in that sense, where you're not printing newspapers like in the old days. You guys are web based, so you can kind of bypass a lot of that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It makes it much. Yeah, that was kind of the vision when we did that, when we started making the Outpost. Was that we wanted to. That we saw that the newspaper industry was and still is going through this huge decline. And that because the ways of delivering information were it's not only like not what anyone was used to doing anymore, but, it's so expensive and so costly and so time consuming to make a newspaper, that it arrives like, a day later and then it's already kind of out of date in some ways. Yeah. So we wanted to like rebuild it from the ground up using new tools.
How much of it was that recognizing the cost benefit analysis and seeing the direction the times were going to go versus just wanting to have a new voice in the community for the original inception of the Outpost?
Yeah, well, for the company's owner, Patrick Cleary, I mean, he was definitely, I think, interested in adding that. And he saw that maybe we had a sort of opportunity, a little window there in 2011, 2012, whatever that was, it was a moment when, everything was moving online. And, now everything is online. And so if we got in sort of on the ground floor, at the same time, you had all these like, big newspaper chains, like sort of buying up and stripping like community newspapers everywhere. And so, Patrick, who's a real local minded guy, thought that would be good. It would be a good sort of investment or effort to like try to do that, to try to build something new.
Good call.
It worked out. It worked out. Yeah. It's going okay. Yeah.
Can you guys see web traffic based on, so like what's your average reader base, do you think? So
the average, like as far in terms of page views, is about between 3 and 3.5 million these days per month. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, it's pretty
healthy traffic.
It's okay. Yeah, we were able to make a business out of it, So yeah, it's gratifying.
How did it start? Was it just I'm envisioning almost more blog format journalism,
kind of,
where you guys are just doing local spots here and there and finding stories, rather than going big and national.
Oh, I mean, it still is that. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely that. I mean, we don't really do national issues so much. We want to be about Humboldt County.
It's more national, more so commentary for you guys when you do touch on those stories.
I guess so. It's a lot of like in the morning. Like often we run stories from Cal Matters, the nonprofit news agency out of Sacramento, which is sort of like state stuff. And it helps because it's, state stuff affects Humboldt too. And so we sort of, that's kind of gets in under that rubric. But it's also nice to have like smart stuff for people to read first thing in the morning. So yeah, it ends up being more, state politics more than national, I think.
And how long have you been editor?
Since it started, and again, I can't remember if it was 2011 or 2012, something like that. Yeah, I was for a while, it was just me and the radio people. And then one by one, people came on, started to work with us. We grew, we were able to hire. Yeah.
Pretty crazy start.
It was yeah.
I mean, to go from just a small group of guys to now millions of web page views monthly is pretty insane.
Well, I think we were sort of able to establish ourselves as the place that we wanted. The idea that from the beginning was to be sort of just like the internet hub of Humboldt County culture, and so it was always about more than just what I wrote or what my colleagues wrote or what people on the radio did. It was like we wanted to bring in just like all kinds of stuff. We wanted to be the center of it, and people got sort of used to that, and so I think people I can see in our traffic, people just wake up in the morning and come to us whether we have anything or not. Hopefully we have something there for them.
I know a lot of people that just check it every morning.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's just part of their routine now. They wake up, have a cup of coffee, scroll LoCO, and go to work.
That's like I say, like what people used to do with newspapers, back in the day. Yeah, that's great.
Did you see that back in 2011? I mean, that was already taking place in some ways, the dying of print news.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure it was. Like I say, I mean,
did you think it would get this bad?
I mean, I think it's going to get worse as far as like newsprint as a product goes. I think it'll become more and more of a sort of specialty, expensive product,
or like a once a month edition that they just kind of put out.
Yeah, maybe fun. If people want that, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I used to be, I'm kind of old now. I was a big newspaper guy. I loved newspapers. That's why I sort of got into this industry. I mean, I read lots of I still read a lot, but like, I read newspapers as a kid sort of religiously, and I had my favorite columns and stuff. And then sort of when I became like a teenager, there's like tons of alternative press, that I really got into and like sort of prompted me to want to do that. But so it's hard for me too, but you just try to, the important thing wasn't the paper, it wasn't the newsprint necessarily, although, reading on paper is a different experience, I think, than reading on the web. But it was sort of having a representation in a publication of a place. That was the important thing.
Yeah, it's not the format. It's what's in the format, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for the idea of, what Marshall McLuhan said about, the medium is the message, right? So like a print publication works differently a little bit than an internet publication, than a radio station, than a TV station, than a podcast. They all work a little bit differently and do a little bit different things. But but largely, you just want to you want to have that in your community. You know, some place that's writing about the place that you live.
Well, it helps if that voice is local.
Yeah, for
if
sure.
you're not just getting your news from SoCal.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, how does this actually pertain to me up here in the north?
Yeah. I'm real proud of that. I mean, we have reporters who have been reporters here for, me for 20 years and Ryan Burns for almost as long. And all of my colleagues, are committed to this place and know this place.
Why did you want to be a journalist? What was kind of your initial spark there?
It was, when I really went for it professionally, I used to be, I used to write for papers for fun.
Just as like little columns here and there?
Yeah, exactly. And, they're largely, as when I was living in Arcata going to Cal Poly, or it wasn't Cal Poly at the time.
HSU.
Going to
Throwback.
HSU. Yeah. Going to HSU, I would write for papers back down in my home in Mendocino County, where there were really, like I say, a really vibrant alternative print scene. Papers like the Anderson Valley Advertiser or the Mendocino Memo, which people, from that area would know because they're sort of like underground paper that lasted longer than underground papers did in other parts of the world. And so I love that. I thought it was, I got to be kind of good at it. And there came a point I was going to graduate school at HSU, studying political science. And I was gonna like sort of follow that path maybe. And I was thinking about becoming like an academic, a political science sort of professor kind of person. And then I thought, this just does not sound fun. So I went back to journalism school at Berkeley. And then that's when I sort of committed to it as a profession, I guess.
What was journalism school like that when you're going through your master's program at Berkeley? Mm-hmm. What was it like?
It was super cool. The Berkeley J School program is really cool. It's small. They have people from all over the world. And you went through it sort of with like a cohort, so you got to know people that I still, kind of know today and, chat with on Facebook about stuff from time to time. And they had really great professors. Yeah. It was a really good time. It was really close. It was sort of insulated from the rest of the campus in a lot of ways. It's in this place called, what was it? Northgate Hall. There's kind of like a old Spanish style building with like a courtyard in the center where we'd hang out and smoke and chat. Yeah.
Have a good time.
Yeah. It was great.
One of the things you hear about journalism today, and obviously I'm not a journalist, so I'm speaking out of my ass here a little bit.
You kind of are.
You hear that it's flavored differently than it used to be, that there's a little more activism thrown in there, less hard-hitting news, less, I don't know if you would say focus on the truth necessarily, but more story development.
For me, I'll speak for myself here, and maybe for the industry at large. The truth is a very important thing. And when we assert something as something that happened or as fact, we want to make sure that that is actually a thing that happened and is fact. And if we don't, we eat shit, we say that, we messed this up, we correct it, sorry for the error. But there is always like a sort of, for myself and for what I like, there's always voice as well. Like you don't want to hear just like a recipe list, you don't want to hear a shopping list.
Just give me the bullet points. You don't want that.
Sometimes you do, but you want to hear people writing about the place they live and celebrating the place they live, or, sometimes turning up a nose at something that somebody, you want to hear people talk about write about their community. Now that's different than like saying something that didn't happen, did happen, or something that did happen, didn't happen, but you have a sort of fealty to the facts, but you want to hear, I want to hear when I read news, people you talking about what it is. It's like your podcast in a way. I wouldn't come on here, and like say something that didn't happen, that did happen, or something like that. There's a sort of oath to it, like a sort of that people take seriously in the profession, and that they should. But it doesn't hurt to have some fun sometimes too. Newspapers had the comic pages, and we have polls or something. Yeah,
your Facebook polls blow up.
Yeah.
A lot of people respond to those.
Yeah,
those comment sections go deep sometimes.
Sometimes they do. Yeah.
Do you think at a national level that's kind of changed a little bit?
Well, there's a huge like sort of bifurcation of the media industry,
And with a 24/7 news cycle, you almost have to start coming up with things and making things more interesting so that people stay engaged for longer.
Sure. Some people would think of that as like clickbait or something like that, but it's in a way it's like distilling distilling a story down to its essence. Like clickbait, I think as a pejorative, like if you insult somebody as clickbait, is like when they sort of give you like a Facebook post that doesn't deliver on what it promised. If it does deliver on what it's promised, great. You got me. I clicked it. I'm happy to read it because I'm interested in that thing. But the media industry is so fragmented these days. When you talk about just like straight news, there's still an important niche for that. And we try to serve that niche as well in our community. It's just that we're not always doing that,
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why independent journalism has taken off. It's because you can build a rapport with the people that are actually giving you the news. It's not just this face behind the screen that's delivering it each night that you don't really know the person, but maybe their stance on these issues or the stories that they're telling.
Sure.
Whereas now you could have unfettered access to these people.
Yeah, a lot of times. Yeah, I try to be. We all try to be sort of available to our community. Yeah.
I listened to a show called Breaking Points. It's like a news commentary podcast, and it's great. They feed you the news, but they also add their own personal commentary around it, provide the facts. Hey, this is how I'm feeling about this. These are the concrete details. This is where it could go. And you kind of build a trust or a semblance of trust with them because you're listening to them each day. They're not abstract, as I would say, maybe like a Walter Cronkite might have been back in the day, where he's just this face.
Yeah. Well, even Walter had, his editorial stances that he took famously, on the Vietnam War and such. Yeah.
How do you walk that line as an editor with your journalists?
Well, give me an example. Like, what do you mean?
Well, so if somebody comes up with a story and they come to you, are they pitching the idea initially, or do they have free reign to run with it and then you're just providing some sort of guidance once it's finished?
Yeah, usually. And usually, that just happens with our younger reporters that we have,
As you're kind of building the trust and getting a feel for them?
Yeah, like the people that I've worked with for a long time, like they everybody pretty much has free reign because they know sort of what our ethos is, and they're not going to step on it.
Yeah, they're not going to implode an article.
Yeah, we wouldn't. So when you say like give their spin on it, we don't. I guess we don't really do that. I don't think. When we're writing, when there's a serious news story come out, that when somebody's working on something serious, it's not like we're ever going to step back in that article and say like, oh, and by the way, this sucks. We're going to try to let that speak for itself. It's kind of like the more important of a story it is, the drier the tone should be, I think. And when something's like not important, then you can have fun with it. Yeah.
Is that just to remain impartial to some degree?
Yeah, or to leave the focus on the facts, leave the focus. If we're like conveying something, if, my colleague Ryan, like he does often, spends 2 weeks like researching something and figuring out something that's important for the community, like that's the important thing. Like let the light shine on the things that he found out rather than, whatever he has to say about it or whatever some goomba like me has to say about it.
Is that the average turnaround time for a story?
Oh, no.
Or varies?
It varies. Yeah. We'll spend, some Izzy, my colleague Izzy Vanderheiden, or...
She's been on the podcast.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. I remember she had been. They sometimes, if it warrants it, then they'll set aside time and spend, a good long while talking to lots of people, getting lots of documents, working on, a big thing because it's important. And then we'll fill in, with stupid stuff and whatever else daily news kind of stuff that comes along the way. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes, like this morning, I spent half an hour, before I came here, like writing about just a tiny little thing about this guy who won a bare knuckle fight from Humboldt in Los Angeles. So I didn't have to spend a ton of time on that. Sometimes you spend a half hour. Sometimes you spend 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not an incredibly nuanced topic, right, to dive deep into. You can kind of get the facts in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And say, okay, this is the direction I'm going to take this story.
Yeah, exactly.
Ryan did a great story on, it was this kind of cult-adjacent church, and there were some whistleblowers, I guess you could say. And this might have been 2020, 2022.
I think he's done a couple on that, yeah.
Great story. Great article.
Yeah.
For people that haven't read it, I can't recommend it enough. It was fascinating to read.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that was yeah.
I would imagine something like that takes more time because obviously you're talking to sources, you're trying to flesh out how much of this is real versus maybe somebody's opinion of events, and did that actually line up with the facts of what happened?
Yeah, and you try to, you talk to all the other people too involved in the story, the church in that case, which didn't, they didn't talk to us.
Yeah,
but,
understandably.
Yeah,
say.
Yeah. That was a thing. Yeah, that was a good story. And so like Ryan, spent a month on the first of that, or maybe even more actually, but he's doing other stuff in between too.
I think it might have been Izzy when she was on. She worked at the Time Standard prior to coming to you guys, and their turnaround time was way faster.
Huh.
I want to say maybe a day. Like you're trying to come up with the story and finish it before the end of the workday.
Yeah,
so that they can obviously run with it tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that
might get a little hectic.
Yeah, it's a little hectic, and it doesn't. It might not. It's good in that it's here's a bunch of things that happened today. They try to fill the paper with as much things as happened as possible, but you are missing some sort of nuance and the ability to go deeper on a thing when it requires it. So,
and then if you have a retraction, if you don't have time to get somebody's response on an article, that you just have to run with it because you're at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, we try, and on something like that, on something that's really important, we give people every opportunity to respond. They don't, or they can't, or they don't in time, or they do after. And if they do after, then we'll run another story with here's their response. Do
you guys ever worry about burning bridges where you are a local company and running a story that might be a little risque?
We try to, risque, or I don't know. You mean controversial?
Yeah,
like that. We try to dance around it, and it's an eternal thing, to be charming enough to win people back and say that come on, you have to fess up. That was what you did, or whatever. And you try to dance around it and be fair to people and not hate people, and not be resentful or spiteful of them. Sometimes it doesn't work though, and sometimes people are mad at you and they're going to stay mad at you for a while, but you do the best you can.
Yeah, it's hard when you're producing, I guess I would call it content, but work like that where it is, you might have one article that people love and are fanatic about, and then the next day you produce an article and people are hateful over it.
All the time.
Yeah. And then trying to walk that line and say, okay, guys, you're not going to agree with everything, but hopefully we have a track record to show we're not biasing any of this, that this is what happened, or this is the story.
Yeah.
And we're just here to present that.
Yeah.
Don't shoot the messenger type thing.
Yeah.
I've noticed that doing some podcasts to a lesser degree where, you put out a podcast, somebody really enjoys it, and then the next week they're hearing a different one. They're like, this sucks. This is terrible.
And does it align with their politics, something they believe
Usually
in?
it's something divisive like politics or some social issue, and they're like, I didn't appreciate hearing about this. Unfollow. I'm like, oh, that's the name of the game. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Because a lot of people, especially people who want to be involved in media or who want you to write about them, in a political thing, they're interested in advancing a sort of narrative. They want a story. They want people to see it the way they see it. And sometimes other people will still see things different ways, and that sort of bums them out. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially if it's a political candidate, it's maybe in a favorable light. And then if they're not portrayed in that sense, then it goes sideways. So what are we? Can we not run this? Can we keep this under wraps? But that's half the fun, I think. And obviously, I don't know how that translates necessarily to the writing of it, but you just have to stick with your values. And if you feel strongly about a story, you put the story out there.
Yeah, for sure. If it's something important or something that's telling, then you put the story out there. Especially if it involves people in public service, because then that's, the people we elect or the people who work for the government, they act in our name. We're paying for them to have their job, and they are doing their job in the name of the people of the United States of America or Humboldt County or Eureka. So that's important.
I'm a big believer in the truth, and especially when it comes to the government. The idea that which can be killed by the truth should be. I think at a base level that applies to the government, especially. If they're doing something or something comes out, you have an obligation to report on it or to say, hey, just so people know this is what's happening.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, it's not as though I think that, especially on a local level, which is where I work, it's not as if people set out in government service to to get one over on people. They're good people doing their jobs. Sometimes they mess up. Sometimes they do things in ways that other people might find questionable. It's good to interrogate those things.
Do you think that in terms of politics, because I agree, I think everyone goes into it for the right reasons, or most people go into it for the right reasons. Do you think they just get corrupted along the way? Almost absolute power corrupts absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, it's like I say, my beat is Humboldt County, and so I don't think that anybody is acquiring absolute power in Humboldt County.
Depends on who you ask. There's some people out there that might say, so and so is corrupt. The board's corrupt. The council's corrupt.
Sure, people like that because it's
it's fun to say.
It's fun to say. It's a fun story to believe in, and it's fun to think that like some problem that you're facing in your own life is caused by somebody else. I think that becomes an attractive story for people.
You can outsource the blame. It's not my fault.
Yeah.
I'm being held down by so-and-so.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of finger pointing.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to do with politics.
Yeah.
You can just get sucked into that world and say,
Well, it's built on it in a way, right? Like, we shouldn't be doing this. We should be doing that. And it becomes personal. But again, like on a Humboldt County level where we all see each other in the supermarket, it's, it unfortunately can't go that far.
Did you plan on doing local journalism? Was that kind of your niche?
Yeah, well, when I finished up at Berkeley, my wife and I wanted to move back to Humboldt. This is where we wanted to live and raise a family. So then at that point, we decided where we wanted to live first and then what we wanted to do.
I mean, it's a beautiful place. I kind of shit on Humboldt sometimes, but it's in jest. And it's because I see the potential for what Humboldt could be.
Sure.
Because it's a great place to live.
Sure.
There's just not necessarily a lot of opportunities or quality of life aspects that aren't quite there yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, you gotta
roll with the punches. No place is perfect.
And you gotta make your own, and what Humboldt is good at, what Humboldt people are good at is making their own culture, like you're doing. Like, people making the thing that they want to see themselves, and that's great.
Yeah. Hence why I'm doing a podcast.
Yeah.
I'm building somewhat of a culture.
Yeah.
Some might say it's good, some might say it's bad, but it's all part of the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I listened to some of the podcasts that you guys did. I thought they were great. I think everyone should do a podcast.
Yeah.
If you're interested in it, why not?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's more, there'd be more listening hours than, why not? Exactly. Especially, we did it during the pandemic. So my colleagues, Andrew Goff and Stephanie McGeary, did that during the pandemic when everyone was locked up. And, we thought that especially was a time when people wanted to hear voices, to literally hear other people's voices. And so it was a good time for that.
We were talking about that a little bit off air. Why did that stop?
Oh, just the
convenience.
Pandemic stopped, and we're on to do other things. We've had billions of features. We have lots of features over the years that come and go. Things have their natural lifespan. Now I think that with the radio stations being in the same building as us for Lost Coast Communications, we'll get back to more audio probably. Yeah.
Do you look at radio and see any parallels to print media?
Sure. In that a lot of radio, local radio, is bought up by giant corporations who don't much care for it, and just are looking at the bottom line only, or to strip its assets. I think that's for sure a thing. That's why we're blessed, to have local ownership that cares about the community and community media.
Do you think radio will always kind of have its spot? Because I look at it in some ways, I think it's hard to compete for radio today. Because with the internet and with podcasts where you can just say whatever, there's no FCC, there's no compliance, you could just shoot from the hip and you're fine. I don't know what their competition looks like when you're faced with that.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, like radio, what we have going for us with the radio stations, and again, I'm really not involved in that side of the business, so I'm kind of speaking out of turn maybe, but what we really have going for us is that they're live, we have DJs on the air, they're local. They're people who can get people on the phone to talk about something that's happening in the community. And they're, again, people that you see on the streets. Now, people, super music fans might have, a different way of listening to music. That could be, but, it's going to be hard to replicate a live human voice talking to you over the radio from the community that you're in.
And it's live, like you said, which is a big selling point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, as far as like music and podcasts go, like all of those, there's obviously a billion places to get your music. You can rely on an algorithm to suggest new music for you to listen to if you're a music fan, or you can like be really into someone else's tastes. That's the other thing is our radio stations. They pick their own music. They're not really going by an algorithm. They might see what's popular in other places, but they have taste and they play what they want to play.
And that's an avenue you can't do on a podcast. I mean, I can't sit here and play copyrighted music. I get pulled within 5 seconds.
Or you got to pay a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not there yet. We're not going to have a DJ channel on this yet, but yeah, I don't know. Radio is, it's like a hallmark in some. I mean, there wouldn't be podcasts without radio. Especially I think people attribute Howard Stern's a lot of credit for kind of what podcasts have become, just because he was so crazy on the air. And then you look at a lot of podcasts and there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I was talking about with underground media or alternative weekly media. You live in Sacramento, you saw the Sacramento News and Review, right? So it was a newspaper, it was a serious newspaper, but it also had a voice and a sort of maybe like humanity that the Sacramento Bee doesn't have, right? Like then that's kind of similar to what I think of as like the sort of evolution of print journalism, or into the internet maybe.
Do you guys do a lot of social media? I know that you guys have the Facebook, but are you guys doing like TikToks or?
We're not doing TikToks yet. We should, because I'm really I like TikTok.
Do you? Are you a TikToker?
I like it a lot. Yeah, I don't make them, but I watch them. We should do that. We were just talking about it the other day, just this morning about like maybe we should like cut out heads from meetings of the Board of Supervisors and have hear Mike Wilson's quote over a background of nice drone footage. we were thinking TikTok ideas. And then I went up to Cal Poly the other day to talk to their journalism class, and a kid there was saying about giving us our TikTok strategy. Yeah, we have Instagram, we have Facebook. We don't really have Twitter anymore. Because it became expensive for us just to post our stuff there, and we didn't want to do it. So,
is that pre-Musk or post?
It was. I think it was post, because it's when they switched up the API to where like if you want, we had it set up, so our stories would auto post to Twitter, and then that became impossible unless you paid them a bunch of money, and so we thought, why bother? It wasn't really worth the squeeze anyway.
I want to say maybe they opened up their API. I was reading an article about it the other day, but I can't remember what it was saying. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you were going to auto feed a lot of that, what that would look like nowadays. Yeah. But it's hard. I mean, there's so many different platforms. You've got TikTok, you've got X, you could go on Rumble, you could do all of these other ones, and you just have to try to keep up with it.
Yeah.
With an ever-growing feed.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I noticed that with this, because there's always the pull of, okay, do I focus more on putting out the actual podcast and the long format stuff, or do I focus more on clipping it up and putting out the short format, which is going to drive people back to the podcast?
Yeah,
it's a constant battle.
I noticed that a lot from people I follow on YouTube. They push like 2 shorts a day and the one. Yeah,
and there's just so much. Yeah. And there's so much shit out online to look at. Yeah. You're almost competing with the void.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, if you think everybody should have a podcast, like everybody already has a YouTube channel.
And there are a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the stats were, but an insane number. And it's crazy when you break it down, because most of them don't last past episode 3, I believe. So a ton of people are starting podcasts and then they're just stopping after the first 2.
Yeah.
Like, not for me, which is the workload. I mean, that's with everything. That's with journalism. That's with work, life.
Sure.
You just have to stay consistent, keep up with the work.
Yeah, but you want to do the fun, good work rather than the tedious work, right? Yeah.
Yeah, editing is the worst. That's not my forte.
Video editing, yeah.
Video editing the audio, cutting up the clips, all of the post-production. Sitting here, this is the fun part.
Right.
And then everything on the back end is the slog.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Do you think what does that look like for you? Are you a writer? Is that kind of your main focus, or do you like the going after the story bit? I mean,
well, when I do it, I mean, I don't get to do it much these days, as other people are doing it for us more. I like writing the most. Yeah. When I get to do it.
Was it hard to find your voice? as a journalist?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's evolved and changed over time. But I mean, I guess I don't know. It's about being true to yourself, I think. Finding, being able to convey, if something's funny, being able to convey the funniness of it succinctly without bashing people over the head, or, if you're a little bit outraged by something, to convey that without saying this is an outrage. I don't know. Yeah.
I've been reading Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and it's been fast. This is my first introduction to him and kind of that gonzo journalism style that everybody talks about. And it's a fascinating book, and listening to his style is just, it's great. He's a great writer.
Yeah, it's very fun. Izzy and Desmond were just talking about it's a really good one, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail.
I've heard about that as well.
Which is a really different book. And Hell's Angels is another book of his that's really good. He's really in reporter mode, and he was a really good reporter when he wanted to be. Yeah.
Didn't he get into a lot of trouble with the Hell's Angels story because he embellished a little bit of the story?
Ooh, maybe. I don't know. I think he got into trouble with the Hells Angels, who beat him up.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was a result of
pretty ballsy to write a story about them.
Yeah.
And go be around them.
Yeah.
For that period and just say, okay, I'm going to put out a story.
Yeah, that was a time. In the 60s there, where what they called the new journalism, him and Tom Wolfe, when they were really experimenting with what they now call like narrative nonfiction. When you're telling a true story, but you're telling it as if you were telling a story, like you were with your friends at the bar or something. That's one thing that we really try to cultivate at the Outpost. Is just we want to talk to people as if we're talking to people. We want to write to people in a way that you'd tell a story to a friend, because we want you to hear it and listen. Yeah.
Well, I think you guys do a good job of that.
Well, thank you.
I think that translates.
Yeah, good.
Do you think, for him specifically, maybe, I wonder how much of his brilliance was tied to the drug use?
Well,
I think about that with all the greats, though. All the greats that were involved in that realm.
I think it caught up to him, I think.
Oh, it definitely does. You can't outrun it forever.
Started not being so great after a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Supposedly him at the end was pretty rough.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. Yeah. But
brilliant writing.
Yeah. A
lot of drugs. A lot of drugs.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just emblematic of that time too,
Sure. Yeah. It was, yeah, for sure it was in the 60s. Yeah.
Who do you have any journalists that you kind of looked up to or aspired to be?
Yeah.
You were starting out in the field?
Yeah. When I was, my heroes were like, when I was young, like people who wrote, for like I say, those Mendocino County papers. So people like Bruce Anderson of the Anderson Valley Advertiser, or Lawrence Livermore of the Lookout, or Marco McLean of the Mendocino. Those were like the first people. I guess before that, I really loved like Herb Cain in the San Francisco Chronicle. I go back that far, But yeah, I don't know, countless people who are inspiring and do great work. Yeah.
So you really had an eye on the local aspect, even from the beginning.
Somehow it was more tangible. I remember, like I say, I was reading newspapers when I was a kid, and the San Francisco Chronicle at the time had a really like lively voice, had really lively writers, and I was really into them. But somehow when I started reading local people, and then I met those people and like worked with those people, that became tangible. It's sort of like the punk of its time, because you say, oh, you can do this. Anybody can actually do this. Yeah.
What do you think makes a good journalist or a good story?
A good story? Surprise. Just speaking purely as a story, surprise, compelling characters, things going in a direction that you didn't expect them to go. In a journalism sense, you want them, ideally you have those things, and then you have something consequential, something that is emblematic or that will affect, people in your community, that will affect them in a tangible way.
Kind of like a crescendo to tie it all together.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Do you look at a story in terms of elements like that? Like you'd have to have a beginning that's kind of building up to something to keep people engaged?
No, not necessarily. I mean, not for like the work that we do, because maybe you want that in a book, but there still is, we're writing much shorter form than that. We're not going to keep like the surprise secret like reveal to the end.
Make them read 5 pages just to get to it.
We're going to do that. I mean, but you might hint at something. You might like foreshadow. We might foreshadow. In the lead of a story when we're talking about a person and in Humboldt who's having some problems, we might use literary techniques like that, like foreshadowing, like, this is a big deal and, she would soon find out why, or, that's boiling it down to its essence.
Do you think it's helpful that your guys' articles are usually shorter?
I mean,
I know it varies obviously depending on the story.
Yeah, it varies a lot depending on the story, but I mean, you can do things in short stories that you can't do in long ones and vice versa, So I don't know if it's helpful. I mean, if it's a really, some really complex thing, like last week Ryan wrote about Providence Hospital no longer accepting accepting referrals from outside their own, the companies that they run, the doctors' offices and such that they own and run. And, that involves like, cardiology stuff and, colonoscopies and things. And, so this is a big story that you couldn't just really like say in 300 words, you want to like give the whole scope of the problem. So longer stories are useful sometimes. People may tire of them, but not if they're interesting.
Not if they're engaging.
Yeah.
Well, and the abortion story that came out from the hospital.
Yeah.
That was obviously a huge story and required some depth because you don't want to gloss over that. That was a huge deal.
Right. Yep, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of different like competing interests and lots of things that happen there, and it affects more than just the person that it affected,
Do you think you have to be a great writer to be a great journalist? Because obviously I'm thinking at a base level, if you're a good journalist and you can find the stories, but you can't articulate them in a way that makes people want to, or write them in a way that makes people want to actually read them, then
yeah, that's interesting. I mean,
what's the point?
I was going to say, like, you don't have to be a great writer because you don't have to write at all to be a journalist. You can point a camera at your face and you're a journalist. But I guess I would say that, like, yeah, you do have to
be a good storyteller is a better way to phrase it.
You should be a good storyteller. Yeah. You should have an idea of what your audience, will listen to over a period of time. You should have an idea of like when you're droning on and being boring, when you're going off on a tangent. You should have an idea of those things. Sure.
Do you think about the audience a lot when you're working over a story?
I guess so.
How much does that factor in?
I guess so. I mean, it's sort of becomes second nature, I think, after a time, when you're really doing that. But yeah, I think so.
That feels like a slippery slope in some regards, because then you get that audience capture and you're only putting out things that your base maybe wants to read or you think they'll want to read.
I don't know. I mean, I think of it just in terms of like general humanity. I mean, no one likes it when somebody is like sort of droning on about something that they're not interested in.
Getting really esoteric for no reason.
Getting really esoteric for no reason. Yeah. There's universal keeping things, when you're a storyteller, keeping things concrete, as much as you can, making things tangible to people, small details being telling of a larger story, or the one person's experience having meaning for other people. There's I think these are all they're pretty universal. It's not as if I think like, oh, like, well, a lefty is not going to like this, so it's never like that. It's just human. It's human.
Human's a good level to set it at.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, sure.
Reach more people, because you don't want to build an echo chamber.
No, you don't.
And then you're just swimming in the swamp.
Yeah.
I always thought being a journalist would be a fun endeavor. I wanted to be a writer for a brief period as a child. That was kind of my shtick.
Yeah.
I had a teacher in 3rd grade who would give us extra credit in terms of like free time. That was back when kids got free time. I don't know if they still get free time, but we could earn up enough extra credit to get free time and kind of do whatever we wanted for maybe 15 minutes. Read in the corner, play with Legos. And so every morning I would get to class early and just write a 3-page story on whatever topic.
That's
some
awesome.
Superhero story, some deep novel about loss, and then just get my extra credit. Okay, save up for the end of the week to have my free time. But I mean, teachers are so instrumental in that.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Any pursuit, any higher education, even just life. I've been very fortunate to have some great teachers.
That's great. Yeah, me too. Yeah. I mean, some of it stuck with you, right? I mean, you still have an urge to make things, produce.
You could say the creative, although creative feels, how do you feel about that word, creative?
It's a great word.
You like it?
Yeah.
I almost feel like it's overused nowadays. Everybody says creative.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
And it's hard. Maybe I'm biased because it's hard to feel like this is a creative endeavor.
No, it definitely is. You sell yourself short. It definitely is. Yeah.
I just show up talking to a microphone, let the guests go.
It takes a certain amount of talent. That's good. Yeah.
That's definitely fun. It's interesting hearing various stories. I mean, that's got to be a great thing about being a journalist too, is you get to dive into whatever interests you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as long as it's like interesting to other people.
Yeah, that's the one caveat.
But it's usual. If something's interesting to a reporter, then it's probably going to be interesting to more people than that. Yeah.
How many people make up the LoCO team right now?
Well, there's right now, we're a little bit of an ebb right now. We had 2 people over the summer who left, and we hired 1 person back. So it's, for the editorial staff, it's me and Ryan Burns, Andrew Goff, Izzy Vanderheiden, and Desmond Remington. So it's 5 like sort of editorial side staffers. And then there's salespeople, and then there's administrative people, of course. And then there's all the radio people who are with our company.
Editorial side being those are also a subset of people going out, actually boots on the ground journalists?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they all are. Yeah.
5 of you guys. You guys put out a lot of work just for 5 of you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we make it stretch.
Who handles the media side of that? Like posting the Facebook polls? Is that the editorial team doing that as well?
Yeah, we'll each usually like Facebook post all our own stories on Facebook. Think of something to say about them to entice people to read them. We each do that separately. Usually it's Andrew and Izzy who do the Instagram.
Kind of leave that to them. You're like, hey guys, fire up the TikTok, do some talking heads.
Yeah. That's for them. Yeah, I've never gotten much into Instagram,
but TikTok.
I like TikTok a lot.
What do you scroll on? What is your TikTok feed?
I mean, my TikTok feed is. I mean, I do it real old person style. Where I mean, sometimes I'll just scroll through, see what's new. But then I've got 10 people that I follow, and I have to go and manually click on each one of those to see if they posted anything new. Yeah.
What are they? Just funny videos? What's your?
Let's see. I follow Japan Eat, which is an American guy who lives in Japan and every day posts a video about his lunch and how much it cost and how good it was. I follow this guy Sadistic Tushi, who's a chess player, a funny chess player. I follow a shawarma chain in Ontario, Canada, because they have very funny creative promotional videos, some random stuff.
TikTok is the one that scares me a little bit. Maybe it's just the China connection or the data, but I've not started scrolling TikTok. I'll post on TikTok, but I don't allow myself to scroll because I'm afraid I get sucked into it.
Other people
just be scrolling TikTok all day.
That happens, yeah. And other people, I know it's it's a national thing. What was it? Jared Huffman, our congressman, was signed on to legislation last year to TikTok ban. Yeah, which I've not done yet. I don't know.
Do you think that'll go through?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Probably depends on. They say Trump likes TikTok. I think so. Maybe not.
Yeah, people don't care about their data.
It's true.
At all.
Yeah, I don't.
It's
I probably don't enough. Yeah.
Yeah, people are like, who needs to read the terms?
Yeah.
Sign up. I don't think I've ever read one of those in my life.
That's another guy I follow on TikTok. This guy, Jose Monkey, who is people send him videos they point the camera around their head, say, "Can you tell where I am?" And he finds them. And it's always a really fun exercise about how he goes about thinking from the clues that he saw in the video about how to locate them where they are. And it's it's fun by itself, but he always puts it under this, this is like, so remember, stay safe. Like I'm doing this for, and I was kind of thinking like, do you really need that? Like are people really worried about like someone knowing that they live in, Provo, Utah? I don't know. I guess so.
Would you be worried about somebody knowing where you live?
People obviously know where I live.
But what about the location of your house?
Yeah,
address.
That
that's where it gets a little sketchy.
That would be
Humble,
sketchy. Yeah.
They start saying, "Oh, you're at 2432 Umpqua Street."
Wait, how'd you know that?
Yeah, did a little digging on social media.
Yeah, that'd be a little weirder.
That is one of the funny things about doing this is you realize how accessible everybody is. You could just find anyone at any point in time.
Sure.
Just from social media.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a sleuth.
Yeah. There's you found my email. It's on this.
Well, yeah, but yours is on the website, so you're kind of an easy get. But some people, you just track them down. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, you got a lot of stuff about you online, dude. You know that? I think about that. I thought about that more in the beginning, doing this, the sense of a digital footprint, and if I was okay with that or not.
Yeah.
Never really got an answer. But.
Yeah, it's fun. I had a friend who was doing a podcast, and she stopped doing it because people started like recognizing her from the podcast. That freaked her out.
It was too much.
Doesn't want it. Yeah.
Do you get recognized?
Sometimes. Yeah. Not often because my face isn't really usually out there so much. Just my name. I went to a party over the weekend. A couple of people recognized my name. They're like, "Oh, you're Hazen from the Outpost." Mm.
That's pretty cool, though.
That's fun.
Local is cool. When it starts getting to a level where it's uncomfortable, it's problematic.
Yeah.
Not there.
Yeah.
We're okay.
Yeah.
Flying under the radar still, but yeah, I don't know. The digital footprint thing, I was worried because I consider myself a private person. It might be ironic doing something like this. But you look at kids today and they just put everything out online.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's any better.
Yeah, for sure.
There's got to be some fine line that you can walk, which I think most people probably do. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah.
I'm probably not as careful with it as I should be.
You can I get sucked into that rabbit hole sometimes thinking about everything that's out there about, I've got hours of podcast conversations, probably saying things that I shouldn't in some and others that are fine. Like, oh, that just lives forever now.
Right. Yeah. That's that stuff. Yeah. You know, and this is such like a, off the cuff medium. You might say something stupid that.
Oh, I often do.
Yeah.
I often do. Sometimes the guest does as well.
Sure.
So we're in it together. It's a comforting thought. But it lives forever. Just like you're writing or an article.
Yeah.
It's out there. I mean, you kind of get the benefit. Do you guys ever go back and change an article, or you just do notices of, hey, this was a correction?
Yeah.
Previous one.
Yeah. We do that. Yeah.
You don't ever go pull one.
No, we haven't done that ever. No. That would be kind of like what we do sometimes is we can hide them from the Google search, and we'll do that for people who were like arrested 3 years ago or something, and saying like, hey, I know I screwed up, like I don't want to, can you pull that article? I'll say, well, we won't pull it, but we'll keep it unsearchable, so people aren't going to find your name on our website.
Oh, even on the website they can't find it.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I'd have to look at that. But I mean, people generally worry about like going, an employer, like Googling their name, and that coming up. And then, so we are able to like pull it from, the major search engines. I'd have to figure out if it's pulled from our own search engine as well, but I think it is. Yeah.
Do you get a lot of those requests? Because I know that you guys do the mugshots and the story of what the person was arrested for. And I know a lot of people that go just exclusively check that portion.
Yeah. Right. And there's the daily arrest log, which from the beginning is not searchable by Google. You can't find somebody who was arrested a week ago by Googling their name on our site anyway. But yeah, we get that a lot, and we're happy to accommodate that, as long as it's like not something that's, I think our rule was like that is not of something that's of historical level importance to the county. Do you know what I mean? If it's something, if it was some politician who was arrested, or if it was, there's some huge murder case or something, then we wouldn't do it. But if it's low level nonsense, then we do all the time. Yeah.
How does that work? Is there a setting in Google for the article that you can kind of switch off? Or?
Yeah, there's like you give it what's a meta tag that says no index, and all the major search engines will respect that.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a time deadline? Like you said, 3 years. Is it usually after a period
no,
of time, or it could be
it's usually
within a week?
It's usually it can be within a week, but it's usually after a period of time. Yeah.
As long as someone says, "Hey, can we do something about this?"
Yes.
Otherwise, you just leave them up.
I mean, yeah, they're still up. There's.
I don't know why everyone wouldn't just reach out to you and say, "Hey, take my mugshot down."
Yeah, people are really worried about mugshots. There's a new law, there's a new law about that. Sheriff's office, and local police agencies, they don't hardly ever release mugshots. Just before I came over here, we were surprised, like, why did they release a mugshot of somebody? But there's a new ruling from, I think, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, or some federal judge saying that that routinely releasing people's photographs is a form of punishment and the extrajudicial punishment, and so they don't release them anymore usually, except in cases of violence or an immediate threat to the community, I guess. So that's not the concern it once was. Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think there could be an argument to release them if the person's convicted. Then yeah, but prior, it almost seems.
Yeah,
dicey.
I don't know. I was always confused by it a little bit. I never quite understood why a mugshot was more damning than like having your name. Because you can kind of. I mean, nowadays you can like Google the photo too, but like back, even like 2-3 years ago, it all seemed to me the big problem was having your name associated with it.
Really, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Well, I mean, if you Google somebody's name, then you can find them. Like, it's hard to Google somebody's, even today, it's a little bit harder to Google somebody's picture and find them.
But there's something about seeing them next to the charge.
There seems to be, there's like...
I would much rather have just my name than a photo of me, especially if you're looking a little busted up. Like, don't want that picture living out there.
Yeah. I think it's a smart thing. It's always been, it's silly for us to like try to hide the photo, to pretend that the photo didn't exist when it did. And there's arguments to be said for releasing the photo, and to like distinguish between two John Smiths or something. I'm totally happy with them not releasing mugshots.
Did you guys ever get pushback more broadly from that, just for having that included? Or
Sure. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
People just don't want that. Understandably, don't want that out there.
Yeah.
But it is public record, so what do you...
Yeah, it's not only public record, but it's like it was widely, the sheriff's office itself was posting it on their Facebook page, and...
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I think, the internet is still, I think, really kind of new. People are figuring out what it is and what it does and why it's different than a newspaper, because things are not only immediate, but they're forever. They're now and they're forever. And, it's, I think just as a culture, we're working through like what that sort of means and what therefore the ethics behind certain things would be. Yeah.
How do you look at that in terms of censorship? What are your thoughts?
Of censorship? Like, so... In like, are you talking about like in comment sections and stuff?
Yeah, you could go there.
Yeah, that's kind of where the only place, I guess, where it would come up in our world, because everybody else who writes for us pretty much works for us. There came a time, we used to have much more freewheeling comment threads, and it was kind of fun. That was the thing you did on the internet. It was like a
shit posting.
Yeah, and people who kind of understood it could take it for what it was. But then I think sort of, and it goes back to like message boards and Reddit and all sorts of things, where everybody like just talked. It was a big, huge mess. And we used to have a lot more of that. But then I think there came a sort of time and culture where we decided like, okay, like you own that. Like you, the Lost Coast Outpost, have to answer for what people are saying in the comment threads. And so at that point, we're kind of like, yeah, okay, well, if that's the theory, I mean, we're never legally responsible, but we're somehow morally responsible. And that became a big deal. And so we just said, okay, we're no more freewheeling. You have to register, we're going to delete your comment if you're being an ass, those kind of things.
Was that a decision that was self-imposed?
Yeah.
Moral aspect?
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for that? Why did you guys decide to flip the switch?
I think it was a tense time in 2020.
Is that when the moderation started?
Well, we always moderate. Even back in the freewheeling days, if you said something that was like racist, then we'd take you off. But people just I think people just started to like it. The world became too much for them, in 2020, and they didn't want to. They didn't want to have to think about shit posting, Yeah. So that's what. Yeah, it was self-imposed.
Yeah, some people can't handle the trolls.
Yeah, they can't.
You could rephrase it as sometimes the trolls are too effective and they just get too many people and it's too much.
Yeah. And it's part of it is where you're dealing with like vastly different audiences, like younger people who grew up with it and older people who can't quite
don't get that maybe they're trolling, that it's a joke, they're trying to get some kind of outrage out of you.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the base level of it. Or they just don't understand like why, or they still think somehow of me as having like blessed, or the Outpost as having like blessed this shit poster, or because they still think in terms of like one way sort of publication, and we've had to like become that a little bit more actually. Not entirely. We still have lots of people like who comment all the time, and people who write us, and people who post on our Facebook page and all that stuff, but. It was there was kind of a promise of a sort of more two-way conversation that it had to be clamped down a little bit, and I understand why. Yeah.
Do you worry about over-clamping on the comments?
A little bit, yeah. But mostly, I mean, I don't think about them at all anymore. I think it would be healthier if we, I think over-clamping is could be a danger equal to non-clamping. We never want to be 4chan,
It's devolve into chaos.
Yeah, that's not what we want. But then, it's fun to be able to hear what other people think. And sometimes other people what other people think could make someone else mad. And so, yeah, it's a dance. Yeah.
I go back and forth on the comments. I don't really read my comments. Sometimes I'll go in because I want to try to build a community and maybe spark the discourse that you would like to see, like the civil engagement.
Yeah.
But I mean, sometimes the comments get crazy and you're like, I don't want to be here, but I don't ever want to delete comments because I feel like I'm almost taking that person's voice away or infringing on free speech. In my own mind, I'm such a free speech absolutist that it almost feels hypocritical if I started censoring. But there is the argument that it would be maybe more civil, or the discourse would be a little cleaner if you did have some hand in that.
Yeah, I think that there's a thought that like more people would participate if they didn't have
they weren't seeing all these shit posts.
Yes, people screaming down their throat all the time.
Yeah. Which there is an argument for that. I think that's a legitimate reason to engage in it.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. What was I going to say? I had that thought. Anyway, yeah.
My fear is that I would go overboard and then I just start, maybe you start deleting comments that are valid, but maybe attacks in some sense on you, or just ideas you disagree with, and then the power goes to your head, and that's kind of my
right. That's not any fun. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I think
because then it's not open dialogue. You're kind of cultivating the space too heavy-handedly.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know if my not deleting the comments is the best approach. I think there's arguments to be made on both sides. That's just what I've kind of landed on.
So comments on YouTube?
Comments on YouTube, any comments. I just don't. The TikTok ones, funny enough, those are the ones that get the craziest.
Oh, really?
People just go in on TikTok and say some wild things. And so those are the ones I try to stay out of the most, because like, this is not... I look at the comments as, rightly or wrongly, as the audience engaging with each other, which might be a flawed way of looking at it, because I think they do want you to engage with it as well.
Yeah.
I've heard that from some people.
Yeah.
But maybe that was just my own way of maintaining some sanity in this situation, is just letting them engage and me backing off from that. Like, I engage in this part and then I put it out there and they can have the discourse they want to around it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's there's one like Patreon that I'm involved with, and it seems much more like self-selected, where you're not going to have people coming in. It seems like people are all into this thing, there's one thing that enough to pay some money for it.
Well, that's the big thing, right? Putting it behind a paywall.
Yeah.
You're kind of incentivized to legitimately care about what you're talking about, because if you're trolling, why am I going to pay $5 to go troll on this Patreon page?
Right. Yeah. I mean, trolls need people who to troll. Yeah. I mean, I was in the past. I remember what I was going to say. Like, my theory originally was, in the late 2010s, say, is that the dude who gets on our comments and like says, Barack Obama was born in Kenya, like the socialist, Marxist, whatever, like that dude, like let him say his piece. And then when, the house next to him is on fire, he's going to call us. He's going to talk to us, because we're his place. We're the community. We're the community that he's in. But yeah, it became like too much dealing with all the rest of the world, like getting mad at the Barack Obama was born in Kenya guy, Yeah.
Does it get problematic at scale? I mean, if you guys have millions of web views, obviously not that many people are commenting, but still there are a lot of comments, and then you're spending a dedicated amount of time going through the comments to kind of clean it up.
Yeah, well, largely we don't worry about it on Facebook anymore, like that.
You just let it fly.
Just pretty much. Sometimes if somebody like, if it's something like really egregious that we're kind of rely on other Facebook people to tell us about it, then yeah, we'll go in and like, delete a person's comment or even ban them if it's really gross. But we have, now where it is on our site where there's not nearly as many comments as we get on Facebook. We have a volunteer moderator who basically, handles all that stuff for us, and it's nice, and she likes doing it, and she's a good person. And so, she doesn't always maybe make the same call that we would make about something, but like we just let her handle it pretty much. Sometimes people will appeal and I'll say like, hey, why'd you, and she'll say, because they said, and I was like, oh, okay. Or it was like, okay, I'll let him back. Yeah, it becomes a huge distraction, which is a drag, because in a way it could be such a, I think that everybody thinks the internet has kind of gone to hell, right? Like it used to be a real fun place to go, and now it's a nightmare for everybody. And so it's finding, I think it's always evolving balance of like trying to make it the most fun that we can for the most number of people. And this, we land where we land, but it's always evolving.
Part of my thinking is also, if you say you have the Kenyan guy who's screaming about Obama being Kenyan,
mm-hmm.
If you censor him, you just drive him deeper into his hole. Whereas if you leave it up there, people can counter. The way you fight bad information is with better information.
Yeah, I mean, that I would like to think that is true. I mean, I'm not so sure that that's always true. I remember like one of my a story I tell often is like during the pandemic, when Supervisor Rex Bone, who was pretty good about like, keeping people on message, like, his community largely about like, no, the doctors say we need to do this, like let's do, or this or that. But he's, at one point during a meeting, he said like he got sort of upset with like the public health department, because he's like, people keep coming to me, like they say for some reason they're not getting the good information. They're not. Why aren't we getting the information to them? It's like, dude, they're getting the information. They don't want the information, So I don't know that like better information always drives out bad. I don't know that that's the case anymore. There was a time when I wanted to believe that, and I still want to believe it, but I don't know that it's always true exactly.
Do you think there's just too many bad actors?
Yeah, or that there are so many stories, there are so many different places to plug into culture where it fits whatever sort of vibe you're looking for in your life, that it becomes easy just to ignore, write off the rest of it and live in a sort of media bubble. I think
I noticed that I was posting on a site called BitChute. Not sure if you're familiar with them.
I know the name.
It's almost like a YouTube. They've labeled it as a right-wing media platform, like a right-wing version of YouTube or a Rumble, but smaller, much smaller in scale. And I would go on there and upload my videos, and the content on there is definitely more fringe. And you think that's because these are the people who have been deplatformed off of YouTube or off of Rumble or these other maybe not Rumble, but YouTube specifically. And they're just building this echo chamber. So rather than having any countering ideas, they're all kind of coalesce around the things that they couldn't say on these other platforms.
Yeah.
And there's no information to counter that.
Yeah, that is a bummer. I think that's a real bummer, especially for someone like us, you know, in a small town where you don't ever want to like drive away your neighbor or piss them off. You know, you want to bring them in. You want to like, you know, everybody's got a crazy uncle. But somehow when it's on media, it affects people differently because people will say shit that they wouldn't say to your face, or they wouldn't give you the grace that you'd give to your, you know, crazy uncle, you know?
That's the big thing is you're separated behind that screen.
Yeah.
And you get a carte blanche ticket to say whatever.
Yeah.
Things that, yeah, like you said, you would never say in front of somebody else.
Yeah.
But you feel that you've got this degree of separation, so you're okay. You're a little protected. Or if you have a troll account and you're anonymous, then obviously there's no repercussions.
Or, you know, people just sort of like, there's a arms escalation, you know, where, you know, you could tell you're trolling me, so I'm going to troll you harder, so I'm going to blah, blah, so, you know, and then becomes a shouting fest that just isn't good for anybody.
Do you let the Facebook ones go a little bit more because it's falling on Facebook more so than it's just falling on you guys?
Yep. That's what I think of. Yeah, it's their platform.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little biased with Facebook. I've had some stuff pulled. I've had stuff pulled on every platform.
Yeah.
For various reasons that I mostly disagree with, usually. But that might be the bias in me talking. And that's kind of where I go back to the censorship thing is, I don't know. I just align so much with free speech that it's hard for me to kind of walk a fine line in that sometimes.
Yeah, well, freedom of speech, you know, it's a right guaranteed to you by the government, you know, it's an inalienable right, you know. It doesn't mean that you got to publish everything. If you're the publisher of it, you know, free speech doesn't require you, a private entity, to like publish, you know. Nobody's going to come in and say like, you have to publish these stories because, I don't know, I'd say them, you know. So it's a question of like, you know, am I like a private business, you know, it's not really the same as, it's not committing censorship like in a First Amendment sense to say that like, you know, there's some behaviors around here that you gotta take outside. They're still outside. There's still the internet at large, you know, where you can go publish, but you don't necessarily get to say it in my house.
Do you think it gets problematic again at scale for these businesses? For they're almost like telecommunications companies, and
I'm sure
there's like some gray area there of should they, shouldn't they?
Yeah, for sure. It's not easy. It's not easy to draw a line. Yeah, for sure. It's a problem. They spend, you know, the people who care, you know, want to do it, like spend a lot of money on doing that. And, you know, they mess up, and, you know, even still, like someone's going to be able to post something that's going to stay there for a while, that somebody else will, you know, rightly or wrongly, usually rightly, you know, be enraged by. And so, yeah, what do you do if you're that company? Like, do you want, it's a question. It is the internet itself. Like everybody's carrying in their pockets, you know, a device that can transmit to 5 billion people around the world at an instant, you know. It's hard. It's a hard problem to deal with.
And probably we've never had to deal with before.
No, never.
Never been that connected.
Yeah, no.
You could just reach out and touch anybody.
Yeah, or punch them.
Or do that. Might be a little harder. Yeah. I wonder how the North Coast Journal does on this, because I know that they lock their Facebook comments. I don't think they let. Yeah, I believe they don't let anybody post. Oh. And I wonder how that works out for them. Because then that's kind of the other end of the extreme where you're just blocking the discourse.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's any really good, clean answers. I mean, for me, I like hearing from our readers, you know, and I kind of like, you know, I like it when people disagree with me. I like it when people are funny, and I like it when people, you know, I like, you know, the good kind of trolling, you know, it's fun because I know how to read it. Some people don't know how to read it, you know, and they'll take something that sounds, you know, they'll take somebody at face value when they're being ironic or. So it's tough, but yeah, it's a tough problem. But I mean, I don't think I'd ever want to go in the direction of like shut everything down. I don't want to hear from anybody. It's like, no, I'd love to hear from people, especially people who disagree with me. Yeah.
What's your opinion on feedback? How do you handle that? Do you take it on a case by case?
Definitely. I mean, there's some, there's people, give us worthwhile feedback all the time, and it's really helpful and it's cool. I like hearing it. There's a certain class of person, sort of angry old man shaking his fist in the air kind of deal, who are just, we've got a few of those who just they want to burn it all down, And you let that person be that person. It's fine. But you don't take it seriously, People people have great ideas all the time. People have substantive critiques all the time. And that's great. That's wonderful. And, because we're trying to serve our community. We're not trying to, I'm old enough now to where I don't really have to prove myself worthy of having a career, But, so I like hearing, people, the more hands, more eyes on something, the better.
Did you have that conflict at some point where you didn't feel like you were deserving of the career? Maybe some imposter syndrome?
I started out so small. I don't know. Like I said, I just wrote for like Mendocino County newspapers when I started.
Yeah, it's hard to build from there and then say, "Oh, I don't deserve."
Yeah, I didn't start off at the New York Times. Or,
yeah,
yeah. No, I don't know. I guess I guess not, because I've never been in a situation, I suppose, where I could.
It was called into question.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Where do you go for your news if you're looking for national news?
National news,
like a Wall Street Journal.
I got the New York Times, but where I really actually mostly podcasts is where
that's where I get a lot of my news nowadays. So
yeah. In the morning I'll listen to the New York Times podcast. I listen to a lot of various things. Yeah, a lot of times podcasts.
I just feel like it's more personal again with the podcast because you can build a rapport with the people on the other side.
Yeah,
it might be one-sided, but it still seems more concrete than not.
Yeah.
You're not really getting a sense for who the person is that's writing the articles.
And magazine journalism I still love a lot too. Yeah.
Like Time?
No, I don't get Time. I don't know where it's at. I read the New Yorker and the Atlantic and things like that. New York Review of Books. I like that kind of stuff.
I've never looked at magazine news.
Oh yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, if you like Hunter Thompson, you might like you might like some of that as well.
I'll have to check into that. The only thing I know about Time is that during COVID, they ran a story about how gunshot victims were turned away outside of this hospital because so many people were ODing on ivermectin.
Oh.
And they had a picture of people waiting outside of the hospital or something, and they were in snow. Did
that turn out to be wrong?
Yeah, completely wrong. The photo was from a different period in time.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't accurate at all. They just ran with this BS story because it was in vogue.
Yeah, or maybe
with hydroxychloroquine stuff.
Or maybe they messed up. People can mess up too. I don't know.
That's a pretty big mess up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that need to be checking for something like that to not happen. But crazy. That was my only introduction to magazine news.
Oh, really?
And that's probably a bad introduction because maybe that's the one time they imploded, and that was the one that I caught.
No, I mean, there's really good writers. I mean, they're not Hunter Thompson, but they're people who for the New Yorker has a lot of good political writers, or the Atlantic, a lot of good, that both reporters and commentators, and it's worthwhile.
Do you think you could still do a Hunter S. Thompson style today?
Sure. I'd say people do. I'd say people do Hunter Thompson style stuff. I mean,
do you know any?
Let me think. I mean, it depends on what you mean by it. Like Gonzo style.
Yeah, Gonzo's just crazy off the wall.
I mean, the first person
not bound is what.
The first person I think of is Olivia Nuzzi. Do you know Olivia Nuzzi?
I don't.
Yeah, she. I mean, she got a little bit too Gonzo for her own good recently. She was a writer for New York Magazine who wrote very fun, very interesting profiles. Just very perceptive, very ruthless profiles of politicians. She was great. And maybe she'll come back someday, but she was just involved in a big scandal. And so she's not working anymore.
What was her name?
Olivia Nuzzi. Olivia She wrote for New York.
Check her out.
Yeah, well, she, like I say, she was involved in a scandal.
What was the scandal?
She was having a sort of online sort of affair with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah.
Did they? Was that proven? Because I heard some discrepancies.
I think it was. Not that they. I don't think they had an affair, but there was like sexting involved, I guess. It's too bad. She's a really great writer on maybe in Gonzo in that same spirit then, I guess.
Was she fired as a result of that? She's not there anymore?
Placed on leave, I think. I don't know. It hasn't been resolved.
Quietly let go.
Maybe.
Placed on the back burner. Which was it because she was writing something about him or it was just the relationship?
Yeah. I think both. She had written about him and yeah.
That's a hard thing. You can do one act can discredit your work or cause you to be cast away.
Yeah.
Especially in today's day and age.
Yeah. Probably. I think she'll be back in some form or another. She's too good of a writer and reporter not to be, but in some fashion she'll be back. But
might do a podcast.
It's maybe so.
Yeah, I heard about that story. That was a while ago. I think that broke.
Yeah, she's a good writer. Check it. If you go back and look at some of her old profiles of like Rudy Giuliani, and it's very good. Trump himself, yeah. Very good.
Have you read that Trump book? I believe it's maybe his niece.
Oh, yeah, right. No, I've not read it, but
I haven't read it either.
I've listened to interviews with her.
What do you make of her?
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. She's a psychologist, right? Is she? Yeah.
I believe some
she approaches it from
like
a psychological perspective. Yeah, I don't know.
I always wonder with instances like that where you're so close to the topic, a family member, how dispassionate you can be.
Yeah. On the one hand, you like know them better than anybody else, but on the other hand, you're a little too close to personal stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. She seemed very persuasive to me and very level-headed kind of person, but I don't really know.
I got to read the book. I've had a couple people bring it up to me the past couple of days. That's why it was on my brain.
Mm.
But yeah, what do you think that? What is your opinion on independent journalism? Do you do any Substacks? Do you read any of those?
Yeah. There's a lot of great writers. Nate Silver is not so fashionable right now, but I read his Substack when I can, the free parts of it. Yeah, there's a lot of great writers who are independent. Yeah, I love it.
Do you think that'll be sustainable long term? That'll branch out?
I don't know. It's kind of like at some point you'll get like a package deal, like get these 5 Substack, and then at that point you're just like sort of recreating a magazine from the ground up. So I don't know. Yeah, I hope so. I just love the fact though that we're living in a time when people can experiment with new ways to fund, journalism. I love that. There's a billion different ideas out there and people doing it a billion different ways. And it's work. Some of them will work and some of them won't. And there'll be new ones all the time. It's a really exciting time for like young reporters. It might be maybe not so secure or solid of a time. There was a more defined career path before, but I love that there's people coming up with new ways to fund the kind of work that people like that do.
It almost wouldn't be a bad deal if you could create some sort of package for that. Like pick 5 and then you're not individually subscribed to all of them, but for the same price you could get a group. I think more people would read it if you had some sort of deal like that. Or Substack as a whole. Maybe it's just a platform and you pay $10 a month and you get access to everybody. But then you're cutting into people's paychecks, and maybe. I don't know if that incentivizes the journalism anymore.
Yeah, but that's like I said, reinventing the magazine. It's like, I get all my 10 favorite writers in this same issue.
Yeah, it's just not in a magazine anymore.
Right.
But it's the same thing. It's like with the streaming services. You've got so many different ones. You're almost like, okay, can we bring it all back together again?
But then you've got cable. Yeah.
You're just recreating the wheel.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's cool. I love independent media. Yeah, that was your question.
What do you make of the track of young journalists upcoming today? What do you think they're getting from the field?
I don't know. I think in a lot of programs, probably they're. Like I said, I was up talking to a journalism class at Cal Poly last week, and it was cool. This is really smart young kids. It was really interesting, and I in some ways I think that maybe It could be that their professors they're not being served by their professors well because, there's maybe still some of them, probably in a lot of journalism programs in America, their professors are probably a little bit more behind the times than the kids are, And I do think you got to learn the old ways of doing things, but you can't be like a prisoner to them. It's like I was telling them, there's, they're going to learn in their journalism career or in their journalism school that, the old standard way of writing a news story, is like what they call the inverted pyramid. You say the most important thing first and then go down. And you do have to know that. It's true. They do have to learn that, but they can't be trapped by it. You've got to be able to learn to write. And if you're a writer, you got to learn to write in like different ways and different registers for the audience that you're trying to serve, But I don't know. I think it's a cool time to be a young journalist, and that there's a zillion possibilities, and there's a zillion different things you could do. It's just that's also like a little bit scary. Where before you had a career track. You start at this paper, you work up to a bigger paper, blah blah blah. Yeah.
Do you think it's harder today because they don't have those predefined paths that they can follow, or easier because they have social media and they could do a Substack and do all of these other things?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit harder because it's more on them, it's more on you. I mean, doing a Substack is hard.
Especially if nobody knows you.
Yeah, for sure. You could build an audience in that way, but that's another pull towards like sort of like the national conversation, rather than being invested in a place and so it kind of pulls you away from what's really needed right now more than anything, like in America, is local, on the ground reporters. We're really fortunate here in Humboldt County that we have really rich media environment. There's tons of options, tons of things to read. And I think that's because we're so isolated and we're so interested in ourselves. Humboldt County people are very interested in Humboldt County. We're lucky here, but that's not the case everywhere. Like, not every place has that sort of strong culture that can sort of afford to support that or any media, And so if you're a young you're probably not going to be able to make a Substack of like your small town that you came from. You're not going to be able to fund it that way, probably. So you end up writing about Taylor Swift or what have you. Yeah.
Whatever can get you some eyes on your work.
Yeah.
At least just to build up a reputation so that people know you're out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then maybe you could branch off as you start getting more traction and go more niche.
Yeah, maybe. But then, are you going to be able to, have 2,000 subscribers to your Substack if, you write about Willits, California only?
Like what? You were talking about Taylor Swift last week. Why are we doing Willits now?
Yeah.
What did those kids seem like they wanted their path was going to be? Or what they wanted their path to be? Were they looking at, going to somewhere like the New York Times or the Washington Post?
Oh, probably some of them. I mean, I didn't really ask them. I let them ask me questions. I didn't really talk to them so much. Yeah, I don't know.
I'd be interested to see what their career goals are nowadays with that.
Yeah, it's a different world. One girl was like, was telling me about like her TikTok life. She said she was really big on TikTok and once and could make $1,000 with a live, and then that's a path.
Why are you at journalism school right now? Why are you not on TikTok?
Yeah.
There's some people, there's a girl that blew up for a little while and she was live streaming, and it's this NPC live streaming. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I mean, I know what NPC means, but
pretend essentially that they're a bot. And so they have these scripted responses to whatever donation they get.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all robotic. I mean, they're basically an NPC doing a live stream. And there was a girl that was making thousands of dollars a day doing that.
I love that. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. You just sit in front of your camera on the street and say these prefabricated responses, and you do that for 8 hours and make 10 grand. Insane. I mean, kudos to them for finding a niche, but it's unreal that we as a society are valuing that in some ways.
Yeah, for sure. But
wonder what that says about us.
People, I don't know. I'm of the strong opinion that it's okay to be dumb sometimes. Like, it's okay to turn your brain off and like have fun with what you have fun with. Sometimes, at least.
Sometimes I worry about that because it's so easy to slip into it. And then you wake up and 40 years have passed and you're like, what did I do with my life?
It can feel that way after like looking at TikTok for an hour for sure. It's like, what?
Yeah. I just wasted an hour. What happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just so seductive.
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you don't achieve the things that you want to achieve in your life, and you're thinking, where did all my time go?
Yeah.
Like you look at your screen time and it's 12 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's where my time has been.
Yeah, kids have it rough. I mean, kids who like, it's first generation of kids. I mean, you probably didn't grow up with a smartphone. Right?
No.
Yeah.
No, I had a flip phone going into middle school, and that was a big deal. Yeah, now they've got iPads 6.
Yeah.
They're just scrolling.
Yeah, it's almost like they have to go through it. They have to reach that stage, the kids where they have to poison themselves with it enough to like
build up a tolerance.
Shake it off. Yeah. I need to do something else with my life. Yeah.
The only problem is you're going to lose some people through that tolerance. Some people won't adjust to it.
Yeah.
It's almost a sacrifice that has to be made.
Ooh, okay.
It's tough to think about, right? So what do you do?
It's a
you
harsh
just hold back phones from kids, which is probably not a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
Say, okay, you don't get a phone until you're 16.
But you kind of everybody has to do it, because if like some
then they're left out.
Some 13-year-old kid, right? Exactly. It's like that's a form of torture in itself.
Do you have any kids?
I do. I have 2 sons. Yeah.
How old are they?
They're now 20 and 17.
Okay, so you didn't really. Well, 17 probably caught the tail end a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Was the phone thing big for you raising them?
It has been from time to time, and so they were younger, especially during the pandemic when they were online way too much. But they're great. They have their own interests in life. I think they never really became into social media. I don't think so much. I mean, they chat with their friends on Snapchat or what have you. But I worried about them being plugged in so much. But at the same time, kind of didn't know what to do. Like school was like having them plugged in. Yeah,
I think a lot of people got sucked in because their schools were online. So you're just online all day anyways. And to try to come back out of that, I think a lot of people got stuck.
Yeah. Whereas, and me, it's like my job to be online most of the day. It's a little too much sometimes.
Do you find trouble with balance for that?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I still read a lot and watch movies with my sons, and
I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I'm terminally online because of this. I'm constantly either trying to find a guest or doing the editing, but then a lot of it is social media looking for guests.
Well, but you're making your thing. You're not just, but
there's a lot of scrolling involved in that. Again, back to why I'm not on TikTok, because it would probably double my time. But it's the name of the game. You have to be online to find out about interesting topics or interesting issues that you want to talk about, or guests.
Yeah.
It's just, maybe that's me just self-fulfilling this.
But you're it's all in service of making the thing that you want to make. So
that's exactly what I tell myself. Yeah. It's all about balance. Maybe not. How do you, what is your opinion on balance in life?
Just good, probably. Yeah. I mean, in general, sure.
Have you had times where you've struggled finding balance between maybe work life, home life, career?
I mean, yeah, probably. I mean, I don't think it's ever reached like a crisis point or anything, but yeah, probably. Yeah.
That's one of the things I think I struggle with is finding balance. I listen to a lot of motivational speakers. It's kind of my thing. And a recurring theme there is you can't have balance if you want to be successful. And I might have internalized that to a toxic level.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so you recognize it at least.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
I can recognize a lot of the problems that I have, but it's finding the action in there is a different story.
What do they mean by success, these guys, though?
I think it's success defined by whatever you want it to mean.
Yeah.
So success for me might be this podcast. Success for someone else might be becoming the best lawyer in the world, and just devoting yourself fully to that path and saying whatever the consequences are, I'm going to face it.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems like these guys, I haven't heard them. I don't know. But maybe the success they view it in those terms. Like you can't spend any time on anything else because you want to be the best at something. You want to, you want to win some sort of like cosmic competition, rather than like the work, just doing the stuff and making the things and doing the things and being the person you want to be. Like that's success, I think.
I think it's just it's defined by what you want it to mean. You know, what does success look like for you? Is it a happy life? Is it a life that you can enjoy, a family that you love,
Yeah.
a home that you actually look forward to going to?
Uh-huh.
Or is it just dominating in whatever field you're interested in?
Yeah, it seems like you need balance for the first, probably.
Oh, definitely for the first.
Yeah.
Second, probably not. But then will you be happy? Say you do achieve what you want to achieve and you get to the end of that road.
Yeah.
You're going to be happy having no balance?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Probably,
I don't know.
probably not.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Might be, might just be because I'm young. I don't have the experience of life yet that I find that attractive.
Yeah. I think people, I mean, you know, rich people are some of the saddest people. You know, I think that's true. Whereas, you know, if you go to some, you know, village in Africa and hang out with people, like everyone's stoked, everyone's happy to be alive.
Yeah, it would be terrible to live your life in this big mansion only to be alone inside of it.
Yeah.
Be a very empty life.
Yeah.
Well, Hank, thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me.
Sure thing. No,
you got a little esoteric there at the end.
It's a pleasure.
Do you have anything you want to plug? Any parting shots?
LostCoastOutpost.com. There's probably something new on there right now that you haven't read. Yeah.
And LoCO on Facebook, Instagram.
Sure. Yeah. All that stuff. Yeah.
Potentially TikTok in the future.
I want to plug Arcata Tigers basketball. We're going to have a hell of a season this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Putting it out there.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Hank.
Sure.